You also mentioned Juju earlier. He actually said yesterday, last year he was playing and he was never really above 60%. This year he's saying he's at 100%. So that's going to be a pretty interesting shakeup to the receiver room. Obviously, you want to keep, you got Pop also, who's a guy that you figure is going to contribute heavily in 3 receiver sets, along with Polk and Baker. That's a really good young nucleus. But then with the veterans, if you have Juju, you got KJ Osborne who was signed, then Kendrick Bourne.
I forgot about KJ Osborne. Yeah. So, I mean, quietly they have, especially if Polk and Baker pan out and show early on that they can be go-to guys. They got a deeper receiver room than people tend to realize, especially if Juju can be that veteran power slot guy. Awesome. If Pop Douglas can make plays from the slot, and they can move Pop on the perimeter as well, should they want to. They've got a nice collection of young talent and veteran talent. I love the addition of KJ Osborne, a guy who was, predominantly the third receiver for the majority of his time in Minnesota, took a little bit of a step forward after Adam Thielen left, but was still that third option behind Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. I think that's a guy who you can put in the slot. You can put him on the perimeter. He's got that versatility. They quietly have a nice collection of weapons and went about it. Again, didn't give massive money to, a bigger name like Calvin Ridley and potentially overpay. Bring in a KJ Osborne, reliable veteran to help groom along 2 rookies. And I really enjoy what the potential of the offense of the Patriots can be, which is a hell of a lot more than we've been able to say since 2018, maybe 2019. It's been a while.
Yeah. Honest, that's why I love you, man. You set me up perfectly. All right. So you mentioned they have some pretty good depth in that receiver room, but now it comes down to, okay, when are these young guys going to play? Because the way I see it, if you're talking about this being a potential sneaky playoff contender, I think it comes down to Baker and Polk being guys who do have pretty significant roles and can give you the juice that maybe guys like Osborne and Kendrick Bourne, especially coming off the ACL, and Juju Smith-Schuster don't really give you. They're more like pure possession guys for the most part. So what are some realistic expectations for Polk and Baker in terms of role and potential output when it comes to this season?
I try to think back to the 2019 rookie class when it comes to that, because that was the class of, it was Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk. And you look at the numbers that each of them had, it was, about 55 to 65 catches, somewhere in that range. And each of them had really successful years. So I think that if you can get Jalen Polk and Javon Baker both above 50 receptions, especially Javon Baker, if he's, hovering around the 700, 800 yard mark with, a few deep ball touchdowns, so a lot of red zone targets, especially if they are in that vicinity, I think that is a very good year one for both of them. And I try to think of it as, what's a good analogy? Kind of like a pizza, right? Where, if you have a pizza, and Jalen Polk is the cheese and Javon Baker's the pepperoni, you can have Juju Smith-Schuster, be some black olives. You can have KJ Osborne, be some onions if you like a supreme pizza. I'm a supreme guy, so stick with me. And occasionally, if you want to mix it up and maybe throw some Kendrick Bourne tomatoes on there for, whatever you got to do. It just depends on what your taste buds are feeling. As long as each of these guys can serve their role appropriately, then I like what the offense has potential to be. But yeah, I think that you're right. Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, I mean, where they were drafted and what the direction of the offense seems to be, I think that they are the ones that the offense will be revolving around in terms of the passing game, where Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo would love if these are the 2 predominant guys that you're targeting. But again, you brought in KJ Osborne for a reason, to help the process along. You still have Juju there, a reliable veteran who, has worked with his fair share of elite quarterbacks and elite receiving talent. He knows what it's like to be, a 1B or number 2 opposite of an elite receiver. So there's a lot of good previous experience and a lot of just knowledge that can be passed on to these guys as well. And I think that, again, if they're, 55 to 65 catches a piece, I don't think either of them are going to, blow up the rookie year and be, 90 catches, just because the receiving room is, a little bit deeper than many would think on the surface. But if they can, be 55, 65, 70 catches, I think that that's a great start.
Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. Use the code CLNS for the first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
So I'm curious your perspective on what my projection is going to be for their roles in the offense, Alex Van Pelt's offense. So if we're looking at like the Browns of the past couple seasons, I feel like Javon Baker's like your Amari Cooper. Yeah. Honestly, like I did a breakdown, and when you look at their size and like their measurables, they're not super far off. Cooper's bigger and he's faster, but everything else is kind of in the same ballpark. And they're both guys you can put them one-on-one. They're separators. They can win downfield, be those ball winner type guys. Then in maybe that more like Donovan Peoples-Jones, Cedric Tillman role, I'm thinking that's Jalen Polk, where you ask him to do the dirty work in the run game, blocking, back at Washington, he's blocking like linebackers, defensive linemen, on top of safeties who are coming at him full speed. Yeah. So you figure he's going to be the guy who's really close to the formation most of the time, and then can get those, downfield targets in some obvious pass situations, win on those over routes. And then you got Pop Douglas as your Elijah Moore, who's the guy you can scheme touches for. And then he can also be explosive downfield if you need him to. A little bit of everything in the middle. Do you think I'm kind of in the ballpark? Again, because you watch a lot more Browns than I have.
I love the analogy. I love it a lot. And I think that, the more that we talk about this offense, like I think that people are going to be surprised at how like talented it is. That's not to say that it's going to be, a top 5 unit or anything, but if by like week 11, we're looking at, oh my goodness, the Patriots are like 13th, 12th in offense, who would have thought that they'd be, bounce back that well? Like it's very possible, especially if these guys come into their own, before the midway part of the season. So I do like that analogy a lot, and I think the usage is going to. I think the tight end usage is going to be interesting too, because the Browns love to utilize a bunch of tight ends, whereas David Njoku, Harrison Bryant. So I'm intrigued to see what it's going to look like from a tight end perspective as well. But they're going to have a respectable number of mouths to feed, and I'm intrigued to see how they're going to divvy up these targets, divvy up the touches. How often they're going to run 12 personnel, how often they're going to, go with more heavier sets. So it's going to be much less vanilla from the Patriots than we've seen. It's going to be, some strawberry, some cookie dough, a lot of different flavors that are going to be mixed in there.
You mentioned the tight ends. That's going to be an interesting one for sure, because you got Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper pretty much interchangeable. Like they can play in line.
Insert white dude tight end here. Yes,
exactly. Yeah, like they're they're not going to blow you away, but they're guys who can move the chains, do just enough, and get in the way in the run game. The needle mover for me is Jaheim Bell, because when you look at how they used Harrison Bryant specifically as a blocker, where you move him around a lot, you kind of use him in some unconventional ways. He used like a ton of quarterback sneaks, different things like that. But Jaheim Bell being a guy who lined up all over the place, both of the schools he was at in college, I think you can project that one, he's going to be used to the best of his ability, where he's a guy where you don't want to. He's versatile, but more in a way where you kind of have to, especially as a blocker, manage where you're going to put him.
Yeah.
But then with the explosiveness, like straight line speed, ball tracking downfield, when you look at the play action opportunities, the Browns love their tight end screens. That's where I feel like he'll probably get into the mix. But yeah, I feel like there's some sneaky pieces on this offense where it's going to be one of those situations where they're better than the sum of their parts, where everybody's going to kind of have their role. And like you said, it's going to be kind of like, well, cut here, cut there. And then you're looking at it, it's like, whoa, wait, they're actually doing a lot better than I expected.
Right.
When it's set manageable expectations, of course, we don't know what the offense is going to look like. They're still installing plays. We are talking about 2 rookies who, as pro-ready as they may be, are still going to have their lumps. But I like that you kind of brought some optimism, because I do think their ceiling is a little bit higher than people are giving them credit for.
I do too. And again, even if it's, they go 6-11, 7-10, I don't think there's going to be too many instances where we, go down their schedule and be like, oh man, the Patriots got rolled that week. Like It might happen once or twice. It usually happens to teams at least once a year anyway, no matter how good you are. But I am curious, you brought up the tight end situation a little bit more. We're starting to see the league transition to a little bit more of a 12 personnel league. That's, kind of the pendulum swing here, where defenses are going to, counteract the passing game with, more nickel and dime sets. How do you counteract that as an offense? Oh, more 12 and 13 personnel. So if you look at, especially like on early downs last year, what team led the NFL in 13 personnel? The Chiefs did. So I think that, the good teams are starting to get ahead of this curve and be like, okay, how are we going to counteract, 5'9" defensive backs? I'm going to put another tight end on the field and, take them out of the equation. So I think that I'd have to go back and look at the Browns tight end usage of last year, just because now I'm curious to see how much of that will translate over for the Patriots. And again, it would be a little bit different, because I think, David Njoku is better than Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry. But I still expect to see, a lot of carryover from what it was in Cleveland. So I'm excited to see what this Patriots offense looks like. And we know that we expect the defense to still be good, especially with, all the pieces that they are bringing back from a unit that was really good last year. I think that this can be a team that, we're talking about late on in the season, be like, okay, the Patriots aren't mathematically eliminated from the playoffs yet, and it's week 14. That's pretty neat.
Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS and get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.